Can you beat Tears of the Kingdom without pressing the Y button? It sounds impossible, but I had a feeling that it would work out. The idea came to me while talking to friends about one of the bosses, and how you didn't even need to pull out a weapon to beat it. A video of a player beating a Hinox with a wooden penis construction gave me the proof I needed to try and give the challenge a go myself. The rules are simple. Don't press Y at all during the game. I wanted to see if you could beat the game without using weapons, which is why I never pick up any weapons during the run, apart from the 2 scenarios which the game gives you a weapon. Since those happen, I decide to change the rules to the Y button challenge instead. This means shields, bows, and the power of friendship will be the only way to deal with any sort of damage. I tried to conserve arrows when I could, which meant only shooting enemies when necessary. So, let's get straight into it. When starting up the game for the first time, Link already has the Master Sword in his possession. This is one of those times the game gives you a weapon to use, and where I decided to change up the challenge so I wouldn't fail right away. Right away, I run into 3 keys, which I need to kill in order to progress. I can't press Y, so I instead press the R button, which allows Link to fire a beam that kills them in one hit. Then it's smooth sailing from that point on, getting to watch all the unskippable cutscenes until I reach the Great Sky Islands. Once Link wakes up, I find myself in a room with vines blocking the exit, and a broken Master Sword sticking out of the ground. Luckily, it's no longer a weaponless challenge, so I can pick it up and use the R button to swing the sword and break the vines. This will be the only time in the run that I will put a weapon into my inventory, except accidental weapon pickups, you know how it is. From there, I'm able to dive into some small lakes, find some pants in a chest, go watch a beautiful name drop, and pick up the Puriped from a construct who tells me to go to the Temple of Time. Since I can't really attack, I actively avoid trying to get into any fights as I head towards the temple. In order to get inside, I will need to go to all 3 shrines in the area to unlock each ability, then hit up a 4th to be able to gain an extra heart in order to open the door at the back of the Temple of Time to leave the Sky Islands. My first stop is Oko Shrine, which is the closest shrine and holds the Ultra Hand ability. There are no enemies in this one, so I can just do all the puzzles normally and receive the first light orb. The second stop is across a big lake, so I take this boat all the way over there and make it to Inisa Shrine pretty easily. This one holds the Fuse ability, and where the challenge really starts. First thing you'll notice is that there are breakable stone walls at the start, which normally requires the player to fuse a rock to their weapon in order to make a hammer and smash them. But since I don't have any weapons, I can't do that. I tried to use Ultra Hand to move a boulder into the walls, but it didn't have enough speed to do any damage. But once I noticed how many there were in the room, I realized I could stack all of them and climb them to make it over the wall. Once I did that, I got access to a bunch of fire fruit, some arrows, and a bow. But who says I even needed to use the bow yet? If I'm gonna do this challenge, I need to conserve my arrows until I can buy them freely. The next obstacle was more stone walls, with a construct to get in the way. I went and looted the room, while trying to figure out how to deal with this menace. I attempted to use the rocks in the room to kill the construct, but once again they didn't do any damage. However, the enemy ended up hitting the stone wall once, and I realized that was my chance. I baited the construct into hitting the wall once again, and it ended up breaking, so I could just beeline it straight to the exit and receive my second light orb. After exiting the shrine and getting a free battery, I started making my way over to the 3rd shrine. I picked up some stamella shrooms for cooking, and an ancient arowana for a quest later. I also found a cool shirt in a cave. Once I was out of the cave, I needed to make a raft in order to cross a body of water. Unfortunately, some geese followed me out of the cave and gave me some trouble while I tried to construct my masterpiece. Once I was done, I put it in the water and used my bow to activate the fans, but in my focus to conserve arrows, I accidentally fell in the water and my raft sailed away without me. I couldn't swim to reach it, so I needed to find another way across. I found some floating platforms over to the right and used those as my way up. Once I was in the snowy region, I found some spicy peppers and started making cold-resistant foods to ensure I wouldn't take damage from the cold. I explored a cave and found some bomb flowers and a flame emitter shield. In order to get up to the 3rd shrine, I attached 2 logs that were on the ground and propped it up against the wall so I could climb them. Gutenbach's shrine was pretty easy. It was just using Ascend to solve puzzles. I burnt the rope in the second puzzle using the shield I found, but from there it was pretty easy, and the 3rd light orb was mine. With 3 out of 4 abilities gained, I started to make my way back to the Temple of Time. On my way, I picked up a Zonai charge and the warm greaves so I wouldn't freeze anymore. I found a glider and flew down to the temple. I ended up ramming into the enemy guarding the temple, which instantly killed it, and gave me a horn, another charge, and a new shield. I made it inside the Temple of Time and received the recall ability. I attempted to open the door at the back, but without 4 hearts, I couldn't. Luckily, this enabled me to start using fast travel, and so I teleported back to the starting area and made my way up to the next shrine, which just contains a bunch of puzzles which you solve using recall. No real issue there. With all 4 light orbs, I traded them for a heart container within the Temple of Time so I could open the door to leave. I then had to watch a couple of cutscenes, but afterwards I was free to jump off the Sky Islands and into the Kingdom of Hyrule. From there, I made my way over to Lookout Landing and met up with Pura, who asked me to check out Hyrule Castle. I went over there, saw Zelda fly upwards and turn into light, and then I made my way back to go tell her. She then gave me the paraglider and blasted me up into the sky so I could scan the terrain. Now, I could start making my way over to the final boss and attempt to go through an entire boss rush with absolutely nothing. However, that's fucking stupid and I've got a better idea. I thought it would be easier to go and attempt all the dungeons that I could so I could get some friends and I wouldn't have to fight their bosses during the boss rush. I knew that the Wind Temple was possible because that's what made me think of the challenge, so I decided to head to Rito Village to get that started. In order to get there quickly, I scanned my Smash Bros. Link amiibo in order to spawn a Pona. I obviously didn't need to do this and could have made it there myself, but I wanted to save as much time as possible so I could get this video out before anyone else thought of the idea. I'm also really fucking lazy, but whatever. I took a Pona out for a ride and made it to the Lucky Clover Gazette. There I learnt from an NPC that pine cones create an updraft when used on fire, so I threw one at the fire next to them and glided over to Rito Village. Now, you'll notice that I haven't done any shrines or any towers. I originally wanted to try and do the challenge without doing any shrines, but I found out later that I'd need to do a couple. But for now, that meant no fast travel and only 4 hearts and 1 bar of stamina. I make a couple of dishes to give me cold resistance before making my way over to Teba, where we talk a bit about the Stormwind Arc, whatever that is. Tulin flies away, so we go and find him. Turns out his bow's been taken by an Aracuda. I attempt to kill it without shooting it, but it seems nothing will hit it, so I just take the L. Some reinforcements get dropped on our location, so we have to take them out. I try using the Ultra Hand plus Recall strat that was in the video, but it doesn't work very well. Tulin ends up killing both red bokoblins, while the blue one just stands on a flaming weapon and ends up killing itself. After that, we get tasked to go inside the Blizzard Orb, so we start making our way over there. I get used to using Ascend to climbing these pillars of rubble, then get to a point where you need to use a hot air balloon to cross the gap. I assemble it, but want to figure out a way to activate the flame emitter without using an arrow. Blinded by my stubbornness, I ended up blasting it off the platform with a time bomb. Now with no flame emitters left, I had to figure out a way to get across the gap. I ended up finding another time bomb which I fused to my shield. I then went to shield surf and blasted my way over to the bottom of the rubble. I actually can't believe that worked, but that was the last hurdle I had in order to get to the Wind Temple. Once inside, the temple was pretty simple. You need to activate 5 different turbines in order to open the central hatch and fight the boss. The first turbine was really easy. Flip a switch and boom, you've got it. Same with the second. Open the door at the top of the arc and fly down and boom, you've got another one. Flying into the side and using some clever platforming and my abilities to open the gate, the third turbine was pretty easy too. The way to get to the 4th turbine was blocked by ice spikes, but I was able to shield surf into a gap where I needed to be. The next obstacle was getting gears to connect to open the door, but a construct was making it hard to even observe the room to see what I could do. I waited for Tulin to kill it, but I got impatient and ended up throwing one of my fire fruit at it to kill it. I then threw another fire fruit at one of the icicles on the roof to get it down and use it as a connector for the gears. With the door open, the 4th turbine was activated. Unfortunately, I had now run out of cold-resistant food, so I teleported back to Lookout Landing, opened the way into the emergency shelter, and cooked some more. I also cooked some stamina-restoring food and some healing food for later. I rested in bed to restore my hearts, then teleported back to the Wind Temple to finish the job. The last one was easy, just jump off and land underneath. With all 5 turbines active, I teleported back up and opened the hatch to reveal the first boss. Colgera's boss fight was the boss fight that actually made me think of the challenge, as in order to kill it, you need to dive into its icy weak points while avoiding the spikes that it shoots at you. You need to do that to its 3 weak points twice, and that's the entire fight. You don't even need to pull out any tools. The main thing I had to worry about was actually the cold resistance timer, but luckily I only had to top it up once, as the fight was really easy. With Colgera down, we get our 5th heart, and a buddy to help kill things. Maybe. They kinda suck at attacking. With one boss down, I decided to see if the water temple was possible, so I grabbed Epona and quickly abandoned her in favor of climbing. I grabbed some splash fruit in order to clear the sludge off the statue at Zora's domain, and ended up talking to Yona for a bit. I then gave her the ancient arowana I got at the beginning to receive my Zora armor. This made it really easy to reach Sidon, because I could just climb the waterfalls. He told me about a guy studying murals, so I headed over there, fixing the murals so he could read me a prophecy about shooting a king's scale through a teardrop or whatever. So I stole some scales from the king and swam up a waterfall to complete the prophecy. I talked to Sidon for a bit, and then I was faced with my greatest challenge yet. A sludge-like. Armed with only 10 splash fruit, 2 buddies, and 4 hearts, I attempted to slay the beast. I failed. Multiple times. The issue is that my buddies do not attack when you want them to, and I could not figure out a way to activate Sidon's ability to save me the trouble of using splash fruit. And then it hit me. After 40 minutes of trying over and over again, if I couldn't use Sidon's ability, I couldn't complete the water temple. So I did what anyone would do after going through hell for no reason. I gave up, and made my way over to Goron City. See, I had an idea of how to take down the next boss without actually hitting it myself, but we'll get to that later. Once I made it there, the next hurdle was obvious. I needed a way not to burn to death when entering the underground caves there. Luckily for me, there's a guy selling heat-resistant armor near Yunobo's boss fight. Unfortunately for me, I needed a way to gather 700 rupees in order to pay for it. On my way to Goron City, I stumbled upon some rare ore veins which give me some gems, but that wasn't enough. I walked around for a while, I found some more gems, but I was not able to gather enough stuff to make it to 700. But on my journey, I ended up finding some fireproof lizards, which enabled me to create some fireproof elixir to use for the fight. I went in to face Yunobo after unequipping any wood tools I had on me so they wouldn't burn. Luckily, the fight was pretty easy, and over as soon as I could throw 3 flint into his face. Once Yunobo was a free man again, I now had the ability to make him charge directly into enemies, which was my only way of directly attacking enemies apart from using bows and throwing shit. I made him break some rocks for me so I could sell the ores and pay for armor. From there, I made my way over to Death Mountain and used Ascend to make my way up. Once up there, I had to use a flying machine and Yunobo to kill the coolest fucking mini-boss. Once it was dead, I made my way inside Death Mountain and found myself in the depths for the first time. I quickly found a Zonai device dispenser, which gave me some random crap, and cobbled together a car with stuff I found around the place. I drove the car up the hellish looking area, and once it ran out of power, I walked straight up to the entrance of the fire temple, after jumping in lava once by accident. Once inside, I now needed to ring 5 gongs in order to open the gate to get into the boss arena. I went over to the left, where I was introduced to the hydrants. Seeing them in action made me realize that if I could find an orb for those, I'd be able to use it for the Moktarok fight during the boss rush at the end. And I knew there were some hydrant orbs in the temple somewhere, but first I had to activate the minecarts with the fans on them. I used an arrow for the first couple, but then later I realized I could just use Yunobo. The first gong was blocked by a red rock, which I had to use Yunobo to break. The issue was that it was surrounded by lava, but using a sloped rock, I was able to send Yunobo airborne and break the rock. Behind it was where I ended up finding those hydrant orbs, so they'll come in handy later. I made Yunobo ring the first gong, and we made our way back to the minecart. After a quick minecart section, I found the second gong, blocked by a gate and another red rock. Yunobo broke the rock, which revealed a hydrant, which made a way over to the gong. There was a construct there, but Yunobo just went past it and rang the second gong. Afterwards, I made Yunobo charge into the construct just so I could get its shield, and ran away to go find other gongs. Another minecart, and I find myself in a sort of central area with a bunch of Zonai orbs which I take. I attach a rocket to a minecart, and jump a gap to find myself near the third gong. Yunobo dispatches the constructs, and I do some crazy ability shit to make my way up to it. With the third gong rung, I glide over to the next building, walk around it a bit to paraglide over to the fourth gong. This one needs you to create a ramp for Yunobo to roll up and hit the gong. So that's exactly what I do. wait a minute. There you go, he just needed a little help, that's all. Now, in order to get to the 5th Gong's area, you need to break a red rock blocking the entrance. I thought to use the ramp that I just used to break it, but it was too short. So I extended it and ran across it to reach the 5th Gong. With it rung, I ran back to the gate, made my way inside, and told Yunobo to gun it. The second boss is Marbled Goma, and it's an interesting one. You're supposed to use Yunobo to break its legs and attack the eyeball while it's stunned. However, I didn't really want to waste arrows, so I figured out in my original playthrough that you can actually use recoil on the explosive boulders it shoots out, and they can explode on its eye, dealing damage. I stunned it a couple times and tried to get Yunobo up to deal some damage, but I had no luck. About 10 minutes of recoiling boulders, we got to phase 2, where it climbs up on the ceiling. This makes it a bit harder to recoil the boulders. There was a length of time where I didn't actually do any damage because the boulders weren't in range. So I decided to fuse a construct horn to my shield and shield bash the eyeball for a bit of damage. Unfortunately, my shields were really fragile, so after 2 turns my shield broke. After a bit of running around, Goma eventually started summoning the rock circle while she was above me. This allowed me to recoil one rock straight upwards and explode. This was way more consistent than what I was doing previously, and I was able to continue with the previous strap on top of that. Eventually, after a long 21-minute fight, I was able to take down Goma and receive my 6th heart and Yunobo's summon. At this point, I realized that it actually might be possible to beat the game like this, but I had to test some stuff first. I made my way over to Ganondorf on my completed save file and tested using certain Zonai devices on him. It turns out that he destroys any device that isn't a rocket or a time bomb with his attacks. The cannon and beam devices also do fuck all damage, so I needed to come up with a way to kill him by just using bows. Also, if any sadistic content creators watch this, I have a banger idea. Killing every boss using only time bombs. I'm not doing it, so go ham. With an idea formulating in my head about how to kill Ganondorf, I made my way over to the Gerudo desert in order to start on the Lightning Temple. I was able to start stockpiling arrows because of all the Gibdo in the area. I followed some children and made my way into the Gerudo bunker and met with Buliara. Then I made my way over to the ruins in the area to meet Riju and start learning how to use her powers. Then I had to protect Karakar Bazaar from some Gibdos, and then Gerudo town itself. Luckily, they had some useful items that I could just take to help with the fight, like arrows, bows, and a new shield. The tower defense section was actually easier than I remembered, and I ended up beating it in one try. From there, Riju told me a prophecy about pillars, so I went back out into the desert to find them. I got to the first pillar and blew up the rocks blocking the light from showing me to the second pillar. I then followed this light to the second pillar, which was lower than it should have been. I located the mechanism to raise it up, and then I made my way over to the third. Before I made it over there though, I realized I ran out of heat-resistant foods, so I had to start hiding in the shades of structures like rocks. I made it over to the third one and reattached the arms to the turning mechanism on the top, then connected the 3 beams of light. It revealed something in the center, so I made my way over to where Riju was waiting for me. Using her power on it, the Lightning Temple appeared, and I made my way up to the front door. Queen Gibda revealed herself after blowing up the front door, and we had a small fight. And by small, I mean literally 2 lightning shots. I made my way inside to get out of the heat, and ran into a room with a lot of sand piles. There was nothing in the room that I would be able to use in order to remove these piles, but luckily, I had gotten 1 fan orb, and was able to use that to clear out the sand piles. After that, there were just a couple of puzzles to solve, but those were pretty easy. The last room had a construct that my friends disposed of, and I used the newly introduced mirror object to open the door and make my way inside. Now that I was inside, I needed Riju to strike 4 batteries in order to reach the boss. The puzzles consist of making a light beam hit certain switches to activate them. The first area contained a bunch of spiked walls that could be stopped by nearby rubble. I made it through both traps and got lucky with the spinning wall light switch so I wouldn't have to stop the wall. I was then able to activate the next switch, which allowed me to activate the first battery. The second battery had pretty much the same start, shining a light onto a switch. This room had a bunch of constructs and I needed to make a hot air balloon to shine a light onto a high switch. I quickly created one while all the constructs were distracted by my buddies and sent it off using a torch I found on the wall. Unfortunately, I fucked up the first time, so I lined it back up and got it. This enabled me to hit the second battery. In order to get to the third battery, I attached a fan to one of my shields and used it to blow away sand, blocking one of the mirror statues that I needed to move. From there, I descended through all the fire in the next room to get to the third battery. Then it was just the fourth one left, which was behind some rubble at the start. I hit that, and it was off to the boss. Queen Gimdo was actually kind of difficult, only because I had 3 hearts, so I had to be really careful not to take any hits from her. I died a couple of times due to not paying attention, or just forgetting that during her get-up charge attack, she's immune to damage. Luckily, Yunobo and Riju's abilities made this really easy. Once I got her to half health, she activated her Gibdo army. I focused on taking the nests out, so I had a safe spot from the army. I died once here because I wasn't actually paying attention to the queen, which serves me right, I guess. Once that happened, I decided to heal to full health, because her attacks would leave me on a quarter of a heart if they hit me, so I had a chance to quickly heal myself back to full. Using this buffer, I was able to take all the nests down, and then her. With the third boss down, that gave me 7 hearts and another buddy. Now, since I couldn't complete the water temple, I thought you wouldn't be able to get into the spirit temple, since you wouldn't be able to start the quest that leads up to it. But I tried anyway. I did the quest where Robbie makes you go down into the depths in order to give you the camera, in hopes I'd be able to start the quest in which Taro goes and explores the ruins. Unfortunately, I couldn't get anywhere near the ring ruins, because I couldn't go and beat Phantom Ganon at the castle. I checked out the ruins just in case. I didn't need him, but all the ruins were closed off, so I disregarded getting to the spirit temple for now. I decided to try my luck with the Demon King's army's boss rush fight. I was able to get there with relative ease and tried to set up a contraption which spun a flame emitter around on a wheel. I ended up losing the flame emitter, so I just started attaching swords to it and using Ultra Hand and Recall. It fucking sucked. I eventually got through the waves of enemies and encountered Mukdorok, the Water Temple's boss. I pulled out my hydrant and activated it. I gave it a little bit of a wash, started dealing some damage, but ended up getting absolutely rocked by the fucking shockwave attack. I tried a couple more times and eventually killed it, but that's when shit hit the fan. The next boss I had to deal with was the Seized Construct. Normally you'd fight this boss on top of your own mech, and the only way to deal a considerable amount of damage is to knock the boss into the boundaries of the arena. Yunobo's attack did fuck all knockback and damage, and so did my Harrow's. Its attacks were basically a one-shot, considering I barely had any healing. I wasn't able to figure out a way to stagger the boss enough to knock it into the walls, and ended up dying. So I took a break. The pressure of being so close yet so far was insane. So I did a little research to see if anyone else had attempted this insane feat. I saw a speed run where they used spin attacks as staggering enough, but I couldn't do that. But then I saw that they had used bomb arrows to beat most of the other bosses. So I thought, fuck it, why not? I had a plan, but in order to execute it, I needed to get a couple of things. I needed to get a bow that shot multiple arrows per shot. So I settled on getting the Great Eagle Bow from Teba. He needed 5 diamonds and 5 wood to actually make the bow I wanted. I also needed a shit ton of bomb flowers. I had none of that stuff, so I did what any desperate person would do. That's right, I cheated. While looking for a way to kill the construct, I ended up finding a couple videos that showed off a duping method that was really easy to pull off. It was actually patched out as I wrote this script, so I just needed to get my hands on a diamond and a bomb flower, and we'd be in business. Now, hear me out, I could have done this all legit, but then this video would have taken way longer, and you probably might have never seen it. So, with that said, I tested out the dupe using an opal I had in my inventory, which I sold in order to get a diamond from Goron City. I also went back to the Great Sky Islands to grab some bomb flowers from a cave. I duped all of them, then sold some diamonds in order to buy the other snow gear piece from Lookout Landing, so I wouldn't have to eat food to survive in Hebra. Teba also needed some wood and a swallow bow which I got from the flight range. On my search for wood, I ended up killing a Hinox with the rocks that it tried to throw at me, kinda like Goma's fight. With all the ingredients in my inventory, Teba crafted me a Great Eagle Bow. With everything I needed, it was ready to take on the Horde again, but I decided to take a quick detour to take my revenge on that damn sludge-like that killed me back at Zora's domain. I used the power of friendship and a couple Gibdo bones to finally take my revenge. I also decided I wanted to check out how far I could get in the water temple, but as I thought, you couldn't get the valves to activate without Sidon's ability, and I couldn't use his ability without pressing Y. Some good news though, I can now quick travel to the area. With the Great Eagle Bow and 39 bomb flowers, I attempted to go back and beat the Seized Construct. The bomb arrows did way more damage, and I was able to push the construct back into the walls twice. But I ran out of bombs rather quickly, due to the sheer amount of arrows needed to knock them back into the wall once. I ended up dying pretty quickly. Since I knew I needed more bombs, I duped some more. but in order to do the dupe I was doing, you needed a shield. So I ended up going inside Hyrule Castle and finding 2 Royal Guard bows and a Royal Guard shield. I also tried to grab another Great Eagle bow, but Teba refused to have more than one exist in the world at a time. I tried to beat the construct a couple more times, but was extremely unsuccessful. The one time I was able to make it back to the construct, I died within 2 minutes. I was so pissed at this point. The waves of enemies that I had to beat to get to that point took almost 20 to 30 minutes per attempt, and I ended up dying almost immediately. So, I did more brainstorming. It'd be nice if I could do the Spirit Temple so I didn't have to fight it, but I couldn't get to it without doing the Water Temple first. Right? Well, good news! You don't actually need to beat all the temples and fight Phantom Ganon in the castle to unlock the Spirit Temple. I discovered that all you need to do is to make it to the area where the head is located, in that big, dark cloud over the ruins. I went around trying to find some spring orbs to bounce my way up there, but ended up grabbing some stamina restoring food and flew over there from the Great Sky Islands. I landed on the island and it immediately went foggy. I couldn't see shit, but somehow I stumbled into a specific point I remembered from my initial playthrough. From there, I followed my own steps and ended up at a shrine and a door behind some vines. In order to get past that door, I needed a total of 10 hearts. I had 7. I tried swapping stamina for hearts through that devil statue, but it wouldn't let me. So, like I mentioned earlier, I decided to give up on my self-imposed challenge of not doing shrines, and did a collection of 12 shrines in order to have enough hearts to open the door. Once I opened the door, I was able to find the head, and then I followed the beam of light that it emitted and went into the depths to the construct factory. I needed to grab 4 parts in order to finish the construct. Luckily, most of the puzzles were just using the provided Zonai devices to solve the puzzles. Once I had all 4 parts, the construct was done, and we made our way over to the Spirit Temple. I fused a spike ball to its left hand and a shocker to its right hand. I couldn't attach anything to its back, as you would need to use the Y button to activate whatever is on its back. Making my way to the actual temple, I tried to use the construct as little as possible, because it's pretty slow, and if I got hit, I'd end up eating shit because I have no defense. Once I got to the temple, I saw a problem. Normally you need to attach a rocket to the back of the construct to get it over a gap to get inside. Unfortunately, that would require the Y button. So what the hell am I supposed to do? Well, the only thing I know how. Chop down a bunch of trees with a shield fused with a construct horn and build a really fucking long bridge. I had no idea if this was actually gonna work, but I hoped and prayed. I held my breath as I skillfully maneuvered my way over that thin fucker of a bridge and gave a huge sigh of relief as I made it all the way up there. Once I was up there, it was as easy as interacting with a statue, and there I was, right at the boss chamber. The C's construct was actually pretty easy from there, since my construct buddy was able to stun it long enough for each attack to actually knock it back into the walls of the arena. I also had a shield when locked onto the boss, so this one was a cakewalk. I still died a couple of times because I was really fed up with fighting this guy and wanted to speed through it as quickly as possible. Nothing really changed between the first phase and the second, except it kinda chilled in the air at one point, but a quick bomb arrow solved that. With the C's construct down, a 13th heart, and a new robot buddy to assist me with the final confrontation, I quickly went back down into the depths to attempt the final boss once more. I skillfully avoided all but one hit from a bokoblin during the Demon King army fight. I also learnt that whistling makes your buddies return to you, so that would have been nice to know earlier. Muktaruk was also extremely easy. I ended up using one of the Royal Guard bows and bomb arrows to quickly dispatch it. I didn't take any damage during this fight either. I guess I'm just pretty good at this game by now. The next fight was a new one. Since I didn't finish the Water Temple, I also had to fight Phantom Ganon here instead of in Hyrule Castle. He spawns 4 clones of himself, but luckily, I have 4 buddies to draw aggro so I can fight them one-on-one. Other than the occasional clone coming to fuck with me directly, and me blowing myself up a couple times due to clones coming into my personal space, I quickly dispatched of all 5 of them using bomb arrows. After phase 1, phase 2 is literally the same thing, except occasionally one just starts hovering and spreading gloom. But this is pretty easy to deal with, and I literally never had any issue with them. With Phantom Ganon gone, I finally got a checkpoint and was standing in front of the final boss arena. It was just me, Ganondorf, and my full durability eagle bow with a bunch of bomb arrows. My plan was for him to use his mace and do the attack where an updraft is created and just wail on him during bullet time with bomb arrows and stamina restoring foods. I entered the arena and got to see a little change of animation since I didn't have the Master Sword. The final boss had begun. I had planned to be very careful, dodging his attacks and waiting for my opportunity to strike, but I got greedy almost instantly and ended up trading blows. I learned from my mistakes and decided to wait for him to do the charge-up attacks instead. After a while, he finally swapped to his mace, but kept doing his overhead attack. I took a chance and attacked while he was getting up once, and quickly healed myself just in case. I got fed up with the attack that he wasn't doing the attack I wanted, so I attacked a couple times, but then he did the attack I wanted, which was actually kind of funny. I shot him 3 times in that time span, and it dealt almost half his health. Now it was just biding some time to attack him a bit more. He swapped to his spear to try and get some long shots, but it really was a long shot that he'd hit me. I utilized his malice attacks and delay to attack some more. He ended up breaking my first shield due to negligence, but I retaliated with some more bombs. After multiple perfect dodges, I decided to be a bit reckless and shoot him a couple times with a normal bow until his health bar was finally depleted. Now it was time for his second phase. The adrenaline really kicked in at this point, that I actually watched the whole cutscene so I had time to calm myself down. It's also really fucking cool and an awesome way to reveal his fucking cheating ass health bar. This fight is actually really similar to Phantom Ganon's as he spawns 4 clones of himself to try and overwhelm you, but luckily my 4 buddies came to the rescue again so I could 1v1 this red dickhead. He instantly started with the mace, so I was really focused in case he uses the attack. Unfortunately, my buddies actually take a while to come in and take aggro, so I almost got ganged up on by a clone and the real guy. Luckily, my shield blocked the first hit, so I didn't die from the second one. I had one last healing item to restore my broken hearts, but now I had no second chances. Ganon went to swing down his mace, and I quickly jumped out of the shockwave range and shot him with a bomb arrow. I see my opportunity and swap to the Great Eagle Bow and start wailing on him. I try to aim for his head as much as possible to do crit damage, but I eventually lost his head. I hit some of his clones instead. I was also locked onto the wrong guy, so I quickly tried to change targets. I somehow dodged his attack without even being locked onto him, and just started avoiding his attacks while retaliating when possible. I could not let him or any of his clones land a hit on me, otherwise I could die. I focused on staying as far away as possible from the clones, while making sure what attacks were coming from the big guy. My construct buddy tried to damage him a bit, so he actually kinda helped as my next attack was able to knock Ganondorf to half health, which starts phase 3 by absorbing his clones and knocking out my buddies. Now it's back to a one-on-one fight. My specialty. He rushes me right away, which I'm unprepared for, but luckily I have my shield up. He then jumps back and pulls out his bow for the first time, so I copy him and bomb him a bit. I end up getting hit by one of his projectiles, which permanently removes one of my hearts. This ends up setting my bow on fire, so I quickly stow it away as he tries to attack me again. He jumps back again and pulls out his spear this time, which gives me the opportunity to attack again. I block one of his projectiles with my shield, but end up getting hit again, losing another heart. Luckily, this gives me iframes to not get hit by his spear attack, a blessing in disguise. After more dodges, he pulls out his bow again, which gives me more opportunities to hit him and get hit by another projectile. These projectiles are a menace, but at this point, he's about half health. He does a charge attack, so I get ballsy and get some hits on him and try to dodge too. It ends up not working, so I get hit and left on 3 hearts. This brings back an all too familiar feeling, as I originally beat this fight with 3 hearts left. He switches to his mace, which does a big splash attack with projectiles, but these are actually really extremely easy to dodge, and gives me the chance to hit him a ton. He goes for one last attack while I'm shooting my bow, but I quickly stow it and perfect dodge out of the way, then attack him while he's getting back up. And with that, phase 3 is complete. Now it's time for phase 4. We get shown a beautiful cutscene where Link rides a fucking dragon and pulls the Master Sword out of it. Wait, Master Sword? Yep, this is the second time where I'm forced to pick up the Master Sword, but luckily the challenge is to not press Y, so I'm safe. Turns out you don't even need to use the Master Sword during this fight, because all other weapons still do damage. My strategy was to shoot bomb arrows at the weak points until they die. My Great Eagle Bow ended up breaking during the 3rd weak point, so without a big damage dealer, I'm forced to use my last Royal Guard's bow to kill the 4th one. But then, while I was shooting it, another issue happened. I ran out of arrows. I couldn't believe it. I'd have to go stand next to the weak points and manually throw the bombs at them to damage them, which could kill me if spaced incorrectly. Fortunately, standing on the dragon only does gloom damage, which will be fixed once you're off it, and I've gotten used to distancing the bombs so that I wouldn't blow myself up at this point. I throw one bomb at the 4th weak point and it dies. Come on, man, seriously? Now it's just the last 5th weak point. I paraglide down, narrowly avoiding the projectiles, and land on the head. I space myself correctly and start throwing bomb after bomb after bomb, slowly whittling down the health bar as I inch closer and closer to the finish. It took 31 bombs to slowly but surely bring his health bar to 0. Finally, after a week, I did it! Yes, as it turns out, it is possible to beat Tears of the Kingdom without pressing... Oh, come on! Unfortunately, after all of that, I have to press Y in a playable cutscene. I'm actually so pissed right now. Technically, I've already depleted the final boss's health bar to 0, and the only thing after this is another playable cutscene, so I'm just gonna go and say, yes, it is still possible to beat Tears of the Kingdom without pressing Y, if you count depleting the final boss's health bar to 0 as beating the game. Feel free to argue about it in the comments, I don't care. Thank you all for watching. It's been a wild journey and I'm happy to have been able to share it with you. I really wanted to do this challenge before anyone else had the idea, so hopefully by the time this finishes being edited and uploaded, Tears of the Kingdom is still popular and I'm the first to pull out this kind of challenge video. I'm sure in the future somebody's gonna beat the game without doing any dungeons, so if that ever happens, I want to be the first to know. I'll also leave a link in the description to my full 18-hour run, which will probably have to be split up into 2 parts now that I think about it, but they're gonna be down in the description if you want something to put on in the background and see how I beat the game, to see my full fucking experience of not pressing the Y button. But with that said, thank you all for watching again, and I'll catch you another time. See ya.